Next, let's talk about R wave progression and what we'll call a z-axis. Z-axis comes from our precordial leads, our V1 through V6. So instead of our R wave axis, our QRS axis, which is kind of a two-dimensional view, now we're adding this Z-axis into it and kind of getting more of a 3D view. So I've got this limb lead view straight on. Now I've got this precordial view that wraps around my heart, that V1 through V6, and pretty simply, V1 through V6, the QRS complex, should start negative in V1 and then should end positive in V6. And then there should be a transition zone in between, and that should be V3 or V4, where it goes isoelectric, where there's equal positive and equal negative, and that's where it flips. It flips from negative to positive, V3 or V4, give or take. So starts negative V1, ends positive in V6 with a transition in V3 or V. Now we're looking for that kind of equiphasic area. So in this example, V1 starts negative, that's great. Ends positive, that's amazing. We love it. Now, where's the transition zone? So we're looking for that kind of like equiphasic area, and here it's in V3 where it's just about equiphasic, and that's normal. So starts negative in V1, ends positive in V6, and transitions in this example in V3, and that is a completely normal R wave progression, a completely normal Z-axis. So our normal R wave progression here in the middle starts negative, ends positive. So we're going to kind of transition here in V3. That's normal. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. V5 to V6 actually gets a little smaller in amplitude, but starts negative and ends positive. If we have early R wave progression, it transitions just earlier than V3. So here we have a transition in V2. That's where it's equiphasic, and then goes positive, right? So we have early R wave progression, and then we can have late R wave progression where it transitions, it progresses later than V4. So we're negative, 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 mostly negative in V4, transitions in V5, and then positive in V6. That's late R wave progression or delayed R wave progression. We can call it, clockwise or counterclockwise rotation. We're not going to totally get into that. But we want to identify normal progression versus early versus late or delayed R wave progression. So some causes right down here for you. MIs, myocardial infarctions can cause this. Hypertrophies can cause this. Some pre-excitation syndromes can cause this. Bundle branch blocks can cause it. Just inaccurate lead placement. If you put the leads in the wrong places, your windows are in the wrong places, and you're not actually looking at what you think you're looking at. So that can cause that. Normal variance, maybe in younger people, but for the most part, we're looking for normal R wave progression where it starts negative, ends positive, and transitions in V3 or V4. So let's look at some 12 leads. And for R wave progression, we are looking V1 through V6. We start negative and we end positive. That's a good thing. Well, where's our transition zone? V1, nope. V2 still haven't transitioned. V3 haven't transitioned. V4, hey, look at that. We're pretty equiphasic in V4. And then V5 is mostly positive. And then V6 completely positive. So V4 is our transition zone. This is normal R wave progression. In EKG2, we're looking for our R wave progression. V1 is negative, that's a good thing. V6 is positive, that's a good thing. So where is our transition zone? V1, nope. V2, nope. V3, still negative, nope. V4, still negative, nope. V5 is almost completely positive. So our transition, our equiphasic area is somewhere between V4 and V5. So that's where our transition zone is, that's going to be a little bit late. It's going to be a little delayed. So we've got a late R wave progression. We've got this delayed R wave progression. If we're going to add in, well, let's just say, let's throw in the other axis. Lead 1 is upright. AVF is upright. We have a normal axis. If we were to pick an isoelectric lead, AVL would be the smallest, little teeny tiniest, cutest little lead there was. So we can, I won't throw up the hexaxial diagram here, but you can go along your determination there. But normal axis up and up, and then delayed R wave progression. So there's something going on here. EKG 3, R wave progression. V1 starts is negative, that's a good thing. V6 is positive, that's a good thing. Where is the transition zone? V1 negative, V2 is kind of equiphasic there. Might be a little bit more negative than it is positive, but V3 is much more positive than it is negative. So V2 or just after V2 is our transition zone. So that's going to be an early R wave progression. So again, something going on here. If we look at axis, lead 1 is up, AVF is upright. We've got a normal axis. AVL I would pick as my isoelectric lead. It's super cute. If we were to look at the numbers, our QRS axis is 54 degrees. That's within our normal bounds. So normal axis on the 2D side, but on our 3D side, there's early R wave progression. So something's up. Finally, EKG 4, looking at R wave progression. V1 is mostly upright. Well, that's not normal. That's not a good thing. Okay. V6 upright. Well, that's a good thing. But wait, V1 is upright. That's not good. V1 should be negative. Why is V1 upright? That's weird. So V1 is upright. V2 is mostly upright. V3 is mostly upright. V4 is mostly upright. V5 is upright. V6 is upright. There's no progression whatsoever. We are unable to determine R wave progression. This is what we're going to call, and we'll get into this later in the semester, but this is concordance. All the complexes in our precordial leads are all going in the same direction for the most part. They're all, for the most part, upright. It's positive concordance that only happens in a few conditions. This happens to be WPW, Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. Again, we'll get to that later on this semester, but if you're looking at R wave progression in this EKG, we can't determine R wave progression because there is no progression. Starts positive, ends positive. There's no progression in there. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me and let me know.